inscriptions. So the way the Roman trade worked was very interesting. So today, so right now I'm just going to explain to you the mechanism of how Roman trade worked. So so let's say I'm a trader, I'm leaving from Rome. So I will get on a ship, leave from my port of Rome, come down to Alexandria. I come down to Alexandria, I unload all my goods, Egypt. So I unload all my goods. I take a caravan down to the Red Sea. At the Red Sea, I have a larger ship waiting for me. Let's say Rahil is the captain of that ship. I will pay Rahil whatever. I will load up all my goods onto that ship. I will set sail down the Red Sea. Then there's a small island. I don't remember the name exactly. It's from D. Small little island in the African, uh, just off the coast of Africa. But they would come down to the island, maybe wait there, or it would be a straight journey down to the cities of, let's say, to the towns of, let's say, Arakmedu. I'll come more to Arakmedu in some time.
Are these ports in India like still actual the biggest ports in India? For example, if you take Burj, Calicut, all of these. Obviously
no.
Mumbai, but
No. These ports, Mumbai and all came way later. Calicut
Bombay
and so
was
on.
in the city at that.
Yeah, exactly. It was a
No,
small
I'm saying
chain of
now-
islands.
yeah.
But see, at that time, they came to what would consider like the best harbors. For example, you had the Muchiri or Muziris.
Which is,
Then you
where are
had-
these in modern day India?
These are around Kerala, Goa.
Because if these
That
ports
line.
still exist, imagine going to them and thinking that इधर क्या क्या आ चुका है.
Exactly. But none of the new ports have that, sadly. So
There's only one ancient,
control those
properly
emotions.
ancient port that you can visit to, which is Lothal in Gujarat.
Yes.
It's around 2 hours from Ahmedabad.
I've gone there. It's
I
really
want
beautiful.
to.
Arey, sad. But see, you need to understand why these people did this. So you come down from the Red Sea, right? Let's say this is the Red Sea. You come down straight, following the straight winds that are flowing. Where's the first place you're going to be impacting?
Gujarat.
Kerala.
Acha,
Goa.
okay.
Straight आ जाओ ना.
Okay,
You
okay,
come
yeah,
and
yeah.
hit Kerala, Goa, or you will go like this up and hit Kambat, Gujarat. That is where the Kshatrapa dynasty traded with them. Meanwhile, the straight routes went down to cities, to small towns along the coast, Arakmedu. Then you have Muziris, Muchiri, which has not yet been found. It's almost like this golden city, Indiana Jones, National Treasure, jaise golden city, which has not been found. But that was considered one of the major trading routes down there. And it is from these small towns that these gold and everything started spreading out. Now, these large ocean going ships, as I told you about, they can't come into these small towns. They may kaise ghusenge yaar, they'll get beached. That's the last thing you want. So small Indian boats used to go out from these towns, used to load up with these goods, and used to basically do shuttling between the ship and the town, ship and the town, ship and the town. And there's this book, account, Periplus of Erythraean Sea, or Periplus Mara Erythrea. Right? This was considered one of the best accounts for trade with India, ancient India, and is considered still one of the best accounts for trade with ancient India.
This was
And they
in
explained it,
NC, no? This book was written when Ptolemy was there.
Yes. So the thing is that they explained, saying that while our ships, which is the Roman, the Greek ships, etc., while our ships are better built for going out against the oceans, and have better hardboard and everything, and are more sturdy. The Indian ships are made out of reed, bamboo, and are almost stitched together. While not as sturdy, they're actually better built for going out on rough seas. That is what I find very interesting.
Plus less damage.
You're literally making a flexible boat. If a large wave hits you, rather than the ship being tossed, only the front of the ship gets poink, poink, poink. Rest of the ship is left. In a strong ship, the whole ship will go bonk, bonk, bonk.
हमारे ships तब
But I
DIY
think because
Uh,
the materials are flexible, we're using more natural.
materials are flexible, and it's interesting to see how in ancient India we thought about saying maybe what, in rough seas we need not necessarily need a sturdy ship. We need a boat that can go out into the rough seas in in Mumbai style rains and survive and come back with fish or whatever it is. And it is in that we can really say, what, that was ingenious, really ingenious, that what was happening at that time.
One more thing that you
And
said
I
about
will give
how
you another
the
example.
merchants they traded. They took the caravan and then they loaded on bigger ships in the Red Sea and they got in. And the ship's captain would charge them a fee. That's essentially how even today's modern trade routes for shipping work. Where there are these big shipping companies like Maersk and people just they buy containers on the ship and then you transport it to where the ship is going. I mean, that
It's
system was there then. That system still works. That business model still works today.
और Britishers बोलते हैं हमें civilize किया.
it's very interesting what these people came up with at that time. And the sad thing is, none of these stories, none of this is actually taught to us through our textbooks. I mean, when I remember going through my ICSE textbooks, I just remember Harappa. Harappa ke baad tha Maurya. Maurya ke baad tha Gupta. And after Guptas, you directly jump to the Mughal age. Beech mein kya hota hai, we have no clue. Right?
A lot of it is so tailored that it's not even true.
But I think,
A lot.
Ameya, we've also discussed this earlier, which was for some empires, like the Mauryan Empire, there's not much evidence there for you to study. Like a lot of it has been lost
Exactly.
to history that you can't actually study about it. And if you can't study about it, how do you write books?
Exactly. The thing is that we are pretty much building a story based on these tiny little evidence. It's like saying, I found a part of a mouse. I found a key, F key lying somewhere. I found a part of a headphone somewhere. And now and maybe I found a glass shard somewhere. And I'm putting this together and saying, maybe some guy sat on a chair, on a glass table, with a computer and something of a mouse. Now try and imagine putting together
An entire
this picture.
civilization.
This is just one guy sitting. Imagine building a country like this. And then imagining how that country functioned. It's very difficult. And that is the thing, that people expect, solid answers to be given. Did Ayodhya exist? Did the Mahabharata happen? Did this happen? Did that happen? किसी नहीं. Oh. The thing is that, अरे बाबा, evidence नहीं है. We barely have anything to say that maybe Ayodhya existed. Or we barely have anything to say that a country like Kosala existed. Or a town like Mithila existed. Now trying to put that into a story of an epic of Ramayana and saying maybe something like Ramayana happened. I mean, guys, give a break to these archaeologists. They're humans like us. What I'm trying to say is that we are literally using, like, for example, Rahil, now when we come to Kshatrapas, you will be able to explain it. We have literally built the whole Shaka Kshatrapa dynasty, the whole Shaka Kshatrapa empire on nothing but silver coins. It is just through silver coins that we have imagined an empire. It's like looking at a 1 and 2 rupee coin and saying, how did India function? And what was going on in India? How can you
Coins
even
these days
begin
are
to
not that
explain?
exciting.
Because we never wrote, we never wrote our history. The most of it, what we know is because of word of mouth and stories. And
we never really wrote a lot of our things. Most of it, like even if you look at how the Mahabharata was written, it was mostly transferred it was always taught to the other person and then one person would remember it and then teach it to his students. Until then, Vedvyas wrote it.
a big reason why Mughal history is so prominent in our textbooks is because
We
Mughal
have a
rulers
lot of
actually wrote
yeah.
their victories, and they wrote a
They
lot.
had scribes. They literally had scribes sitting and write, which Chanakya and Chandragupta Maurya hold such an important this in our
Or like Ashok
history.
for his edicts, law
Exactly. We have
edicts.
something. See, it's like this. I finally find a book on, for example, let's say Rahil had an empire, right? Ancient empire. I find a book written by Rahil, or by one of Rahil's ministers, or by one of Rahil's subjects, or by something. I can use that as my reference to build that whole empire. Now, if Rahil was lazy and didn't have anyone write anything, and only had coins and maybe a chasma lying around, how am I going to be able to build an empire?
But don't you think there's very less credibility about all of this because no one is ever going to, especially the amount of pride these kings had, or usually you assume a king to have, is that the scribe would actually fear writing something negative or writing about his losses, writing about the problems in his kingdom, and only
It's
make it
true.
sound prosperous.
It's very much true. For example, now I'll just give you the example of the Shaka Kshatrapas, right? In that you have Nahapana's son-in-law. He has described Nahapana as almost like God on earth, right? That because son-in-law, यार थोड़ा तो
दामाद जी।
father-in-law का हाँ दामाद जी तो थोड़ा मस्का तो लगाना पड़ेगा ना
But you know,
father-in-law को.
even that in India, we actually had a form of Indian poetry. So for Indian songs and Indian poems that were written, it was written by someone who would be like a court, like you know, the British era's court jester would be something like that, and the poems would actually ridicule the king, and they were the only people in the courts who were allowed to ridicule the king to his face by ways of poetry. So the king would also laugh. So, I mean, it's not that people were completely afraid. There were only few people who were allowed to, go and tell the king like, "Hey, this is wrong, this is wrong." But it wasn't always like that, and I think some kings realized it. Some kings who at least they might have realized the importance. That listen, if I don't listen to criticism, I won't know where I'm going wrong in ruling my kingdom. Which is why they let this thing happen.
See, the reason why many of these tales are untold or unknown is because people get scared. Because, see, now I've written that paper on Shaka Kshatrapas. It took me the better part of 2 months of constant reading, and on top of that, interviewing Dr. Rajgor non-stop. That helped me get maybe 10 pages. And those 10 pages barely scratch the surface of what the Kshatrapa empire was, Kshatrapa kingdom was.